Computer prodigy Aaron Swartz would have been 28 on November 8th of this year. Tragically, on January 11th, 2013, Aaron took his own life. He was the target of a merciless witch hunt by the Department of Justice and was facing 35 years behind bars for the crime of releasing information. Considering the odds stacked against him, he felt death was his only escape. As someone who transformed the way we all know, use, and love the internet, Aaron should have gotten a Medal of Honor, not a death sentence. See, Aaron's genius can be traced back to the development of RSS feeds, a formula that can produce a web feed of whatever information one wishes to access, which changed the way we filter and accumulate data on the web. And his passion for making information open source was exemplified in his partnership with Lawrence Lessig at only 15 years old, writing code to establish Creative Commons, a database devoted to growing the amount of creative works available to use, share, and build off of. This accomplishment alone facilitated the explosion of what was capable online, allowing people to use and share imagery and work without worrying about costly or legal ramifications for copyright violations. But perhaps Aaron's mark will forever be felt by co-founding Reddit, one of the most popular internet sites today, one that embodies what neutral and free access to information looks like. Reddit exploded, and Aaron sold it for over $1 million. But he rejected the business world. He didn't care about buying fancy things. Instead, he put his entire being into political activism. He began watchdog.net and openlibrary.org, a site that would produce one page for every published book in the world that could allow users to buy, borrow, or browse its content. He was obsessed with the idea of libraries and making information that should be publicly available. But it was this idea that came to define Aaron as a criminal in the eyes of the federal government, one that deserved apparently to spend more time in prison than rapists and murderers. His target? JSTOR, a digital library of academic journals and books. See, books are our cultural legacy, as Aaron dedicated his life to show us. Unfortunately, the majority of the wealth of human knowledge is owned by a few publishing companies that make billions through licensing fees and hoarding information that should be free to every human being. To have every scholarly article and scientific journal comprised of an unsurmountable amount of labor and hardships owned by monolithic corporations is a terrifying thought, especially considering that most of the articles have been paid for by taxpayers and government grants. While Aaron wrote about plans to release academic journals and the egregious overreach to prosecute online activists working to free information on a blog called Guerrilla Open Access Manifesto, he said it's called stealing or piracy, as if sharing a wealth of knowledge were the moral equivalent of plundering a ship and murdering its crew. But sharing isn't immoral. It's a moral imperative. Only those blinded by greed would refuse to let a friend make a copy. There is no justice in following unjust laws. It's time to come into the light, and in the grand tradition of civil disobedience, declare our opposition to this private theft of public culture. With enough of us around the world, we'll not just send a strong message opposing the privatization of knowledge, we'll make it a thing of the past. But Aaron's altruism came at a heavy price. The footage you're seeing now is from a planted surveillance camera in an electrical closet of MIT, where Aaron attempted to download millions of articles from JSTOR to release for free. This footage was what federal prosecutors used to charge Aaron with computer and wire fraud with, and thus decades behind bars. Aaron praised the internet's ability to give everyone and anyone a license to speak, but noted the problem is that many of those voices will never get heard, which is why he dedicated the last year of his life vocally leading the charge against the corporate monopolization of the web, with legislation like SOPA and PIPA. And now that he's dead, his blood is on the hands of the U.S. government for institutionalizing a two-tiered justice system that immunizes war criminals and corporate corruption, yet bone-chillingly punishes activists and journalists. It's hard to sum up the brilliance of Aaron Swartz or to articulate the impact he had on making the internet and thus the world such a better and more inspiring place. So instead, I'll leave you with the words of this prolific innovator himself and the choice we all have to make in order to carry on his legacy.
There's sort of these two polarizing perspectives, right? Everything is great. The internet has created all this freedom and liberty and everything's going to be fantastic. Or everything is terrible. The internet has created all these tools for cracking down and spying and, controlling what we say. And I think both are true, right? The internet has done both. And both are kind of amazing and astonishing. And which one will win out in the long run is up to us. It doesn't make sense to say, oh, one is doing better than the other. They're both true. And it's up to us which ones we emphasize and which ones we take advantage of, because they're both there and they're both always going to be there.